For 500 years, one single question has sparked this huge, passionate debate among communities and historians all across the Philippines. It's a question that digs deep into national identity, regional pride, and the very dawn of a new era for the islands. So, let's try and piece this historical puzzle together.
Sounds like a simple question, right? But the answer, well, it's anything but. And we're not just talking about some random trivia question here. This is a hunt for the exact spot of one of the most pivotal moments in Philippine history. And for centuries, two different places have claimed it as their own.
Okay, so there's one thing that everybody agrees on. On Easter Sunday, March 31st, 1521, Ferdinand Magellan's crew held the first Catholic Mass. That date, it's locked in, set in stone. But the where? Well, that's been the big mystery for the last 500 years.
So at the center of this whole historical detective story, you've got two main contenders. On one side, you have Butuan, down in Mindanao, and on the other, the island of Limasawa, up in the Visayas. Both sides are incredibly passionate, and as you're about to see, both have some pretty compelling evidence.
You know, for the longest time, pretty much everyone thought the answer was Butuan. It was kind of the accepted truth for centuries. So let's kick things off there and take a look at the evidence that made everyone so sure.
And look, for more than 100 years, there was this massive piece of physical evidence staring everyone in the face. This monument, put up back in 1872, was pretty much seen as the final word. People saw this and thought, well, that's it, case closed. It was literally a declaration carved in stone. The case for Butuan also gets into the numbers. See, supporters point to the travelogue of Antonio Pigafetta, who was Magellan's chronicler. He wrote down the distance from their first stop, Homonahon, to the place of the Mass, which he called Mazawa, as being 20 to 25 leagues. Well, the distance to Butuan fits right in that sweet spot. Limasawa, on the other hand, is way closer. Same thing for the trip from Mazawa to Cebu. When you crunch the numbers, they just seem to line up perfectly for Butuan. But wait, there's more. The evidence for Butuan isn't just about the travelogue. You've got archaeologists finding ancient Balangay boats right there, which perfectly match Pigafetta's descriptions. He also talked about a land rich with gold, and we know the Agusan Valley was famous for its gold mines. He mentioned houses on stilts, fertile land for farming. You put all that together, and it paints a picture that just seems to fit Butuan's geography way better than some small sandy island. Okay, so that all sounds pretty compelling, right? But modern historians started digging back into the primary sources, and they began to build this really powerful counter-argument for Limasawa. And really, this entire debate comes down to one guy, Antonio Pigafetta. As the guy who wrote everything down for the expedition, his diary is the only credible eyewitness account we have. It's our ground zero. So to get to the bottom of this, historians had to go back to the original text and ask a very simple question. What did Pigafetta really say? And you know what? When historians actually examined a faithful translation of Pigafetta's original words, a totally different story started to take shape. First off, he kept calling Mazawa an island. Butuan's site, Masawa, isn't an island. It's a river delta. Second, Pigafetta's pretty clear that the king of Butuan was just a visitor on Mazawa, which doesn't make sense if the Mass was in Butuan. And maybe the biggest clue of all? If you plot their route and look at Pigafetta's own maps, they point to an island exactly where Limasawa is, and they never even touched Mindanao. So here we are, two completely different stories, both pulled from the exact same historical text. How on earth do you settle a debate like that? Well, in the Philippines, the official historical bodies stepped in to make a call. And their decision, which came down in 2020, was crystal clear. Basically, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines said, look, the arguments for Butuan, like the monument and the distance math, they're just not strong enough to ignore all the evidence pointing somewhere else. Now, this wasn't some quick, off-the-cuff decision. Not at all. The NHCP put together this incredibly thorough process. They got the country's top historians in a room to go over every single piece of evidence, the original writings, the maps, arguments from both camps. And the final call wasn't just some new idea. It actually backed up earlier rulings, creating this solid, official, academic agreement. So, after hundreds of years of back and forth, we have an official answer. The answer to that big question, where did it happen, is officially Limasawa Island in southern Leyte. This is the place now recognized by the government and historians as the real location of that first Easter Sunday Mass. And it's not like this verdict is out there on its own. it's got the support of other major groups, like the Church Historians Association of the Philippines. I mean, they went so far as to call out recent pro-Butuan arguments as being methodologically erroneous, which really sealed the deal for the academic world. So there you have it. Case closed, right? The experts have made their ruling. But, when it comes to history, the official story is rarely the final word. Which brings us to a much bigger question. Why do people still care so deeply about this? And that's really the final piece of the puzzle here. If all the experts and official bodies have pointed their fingers at Limasawa, why is this debate still so heated, especially in a place like Butuan? Why does it keep going?
Well, because it was never, ever just about a location on a map. For the folks in Butuan, this is about their identity, their heritage, something that's been passed down for generations. This whole controversy is a perfect example of how one historical document can be read in totally different ways. It's that classic push and pull between what's written in the history books and what's remembered in local tradition. And yeah, even with an official verdict, you've still got new books coming out, new voices challenging it, and that keeps the fire burning.
In the end, this whole story about the First Mass leaves us with this really fascinating question, one that goes way beyond the Philippines. It really makes you think about what history even is. What happens when the official history, decided by experts in a capital city, doesn't match up with the treasured memories and identity of a local community? Who really gets to have the final say?